This naturalist is searching for vampires. On this night, even barn owls appear ghostly. We now know real wolves never hunt humans. But werewolves hunt nothing else. A human who's bitten by one becomes a werewolf too. A toad, enjoying his last supper. Because on Halloween, he becomes the main ingredient of a witch's brew. There are monsters everywhere. The king of all monsters is a vampire. Count Dracula. Every corner of Dracula's home is inhabited by creatures thirsty for blood. And there's one naturalist who will dare to search them out.
Werewolves and witches, ghouls and Dracula, creatures from our darkest imagination. But of course there are real animal vampires. This mansion is full of them. I'm intrigued by their extraordinary capabilities. Look at these bizarre fish.
Lampreys have tongues with sharp teeth to rasp away the flesh of their victims. I'm fascinated by animal bloodsuckers and want to find out more.
The best way to do that is to have my blood sucked by as many animal vampires as I can.
That might sound masochistic, but the bite of most animal vampires doesn't hurt at all. They don't want their prey to know that they're there. But don't worry if you don't like the sight of blood. My encounters won't be gory. Bloodsuckers like these leeches never spill a drop.
This is a Malaysian fruit bat. What a gorgeous, come on. Feeds on bananas, all sorts of other fruit. There's other bats that feed on insects, even fish. Some even hunt rats and mice. But a few species, she's having a clean, a few species feed exclusively on blood. And those are the first vampires I'm going to meet. Come on.
A vampire bat flying around a European castle. You'd only ever see this in a horror movie. Because blood-feeding bats only live in South America.
I never thought I'd think a vampire bat as being cute. He's got little black button eyes. Vampire bats use them quite a lot when they're locating their prey. They don't just rely totally on echolocation. And this snout, inside that snout, it's got big teeth, big razor-sharp teeth for slicing into the prey's flesh. And there are heat receptors there, They use those heat receptors when they're close to the prey's skin, and they can find out where there's blood vessels close to the surface, and that's where they make their puncture wound.
I'm giving this captive bat a feast of cow's blood.
Look, he's lapping the blood like a dog taking water from a bowl. Vampire bats don't suck blood,
But they're very good at biting.
they've got razor-sharp incisors in their top jaw, smaller ones in the lower jaw. They pinch a bit of skin, slice that off, then they make a wound, and the blood starts flowing. It keeps flowing because they have incredible chemicals in their saliva. Draculin, the bat's anticoagulant, is so powerful it's being used in tests to help the victims of heart attacks and strokes. So vampire bats certainly aren't all bad. In fact, they're not bad at all. Look at this little fella, lovely little face. This little chap's been lapping blood for 8, maybe 10 minutes. So he's had his fill. Off he goes.
Vampire bats need to drink blood every day, but other bloodsuckers go without for a whole year.
No mammals have entered this room for 5 months, or perhaps longer. There are hundreds and thousands of vampires waiting for a meal of warm blood. The best way to see them is to take off my shoes and socks, roll up my trouser legs, and when I go in that room, the whole room is going to seethe.
From anywhere in the room, the fleas can sense my footsteps and my breath and get to me fast in leaps 150 times the length of their bodies.
I can feel them land, and then they bite. They are thirsty for my blood.
It feels like a lot of new hair sprouting all at once. Inside a flea's head is a ball of elastic connected to the drilling mouthpiece. It squeezes the elastic and lets it go, and that drives the drill like a jackhammer into my skin. Fleas are streamlined so they can actually swim through the fur and hair of mammals, and their head is like the keel of a boat. If they need to, they anchor themselves with combs of bristles.
Now, I've got to get them off. To do that, I need a bath and a friend.
The bath, because fleas are like any other air-breathing animal. Underwater they drown, so they pop up to the surface. The friend, by the way, is someone to clear the fleas away before I run out of breath. It's bedtime now, but it's when you're in bed that the vampires come.
This room's full of bloodsuckers.
I can tell by the sickly sweet smell there are even bedbugs coming out of the woodwork.
To attract them, I need to try to go to sleep.
To bedbugs, I'm just a big bag of blood that leaks nutritious food when they bite. These little vampires have a link with bats. Their ancestors lived in caves, sucking bats' blood by day and the blood of Stone Age humans by night. When we started living in houses, some of the bugs left the bats and moved in with us. Bedbugs produce that sickly sweet smell to summon other bedbugs to dinner. The bodies of these insects are flat now, but in a little while they'll be bloated with blood. They've special flexible membranes that allow their bodies to expand during a meal. But first they use their sharp mouth parts to pierce the skin and tap into a vein. Blood is the essential current of life, delivering all the nutrition and oxygen that our bodies need. It runs in vessels like a continual train on a track or boats in canals. The boats are the red cells that give blood its colour. These red cells are packed with protein, and that's just what a vampire needs. My heart pumping life into my body is also pumping life into the vampire. But a bedbug doesn't carry disease, and when it's full, it returns to the woodwork, which is more than you can say for its relative, the body louse. Body lice can carry typhus, and they live on our skin and in our clothes. Their bodies are flat to cling close and weather the most vigorous scratching. Each leg has a grasping claw designed to fit a hair exactly. When keeping clean is difficult because of war or natural disasters, people can become infested with them. One man had a cargo of over 16,000 lice. Luckily, most of us are clean enough to avoid contact with body lice or bedbugs. In parts of South America, there's a monster vampire. It's an inch long and carries the deadly Chagas disease. The kissing bug is its sinister name. It usually sucks blood from around the lips. A million people catch Chagas every year, and 45,000 of them die. In a single feed, the bug takes a full teaspoon of blood, but it doesn't inject the disease. The Chagas parasite is in its stream of waste. If this waste is rubbed into the bite, the victim can get a high fever, then a bloating of the body. Without treatment, they'll die. Like classic vampires, these insect bloodsuckers shun the daylight and head for dark places. But where in a house like this are you bound to find a real horror? At the top of the stairs, of course. Just pigeons, not vampires. But believe it or not, blood-sucking birds do exist. I must travel the world to find these and other remarkable vampires. Like a classic vampire hunter, I'm taking my wooden stake, crucifixes and cloves of garlic, just in case. But as a naturalist, I can't leave these essentials behind. If I stay in this house, I'm worried about losing every drop of my blood. My journey begins in the Pacific Ocean on a voyage to the Galapagos Islands. The animals here are bold and curious, whether they're sea lion pups or marine iguanas. Seeing animals like that gave Charles Darwin a lot of his ideas about evolution. It was about 150 years ago that Darwin visited the Galapagos, but he never came to the island I'm going to visit now. It's Wolf, one of the most remote. It's a shame Darwin never visited Wolf. He'd have been really interested in the blood feeder I'm climbing up here to see. It's this, believe it or not, a little finch, a sharp-beaked ground finch. Wolf Island has bustling cities of seabirds, but other than that, the vegetation is sparse and there are few other kinds of animals, and there's very little fresh water.
These are marsh boobies. You don't get a bird much whiter than they are. These huge colonies of seabirds are sustained by the bounty out there. But of course, the finches can't fish, but they still get a share in this bounty in a most surprising way.
All of the Galapagos Islands have finches, but only here are the finches vampires. A big helpless chick like this is easy prey. The finches peck at the base of the new feathers where there's a lot of fresh blood. The odd thing is, the chick hardly seems to mind.
The wildlife of the Galapagos is so fearless. Look at this. They're feeding on a marsh booby. What they've done is they've pecked at a blood vessel at the top of the leg, and they're coming in and drinking the blood. Nobody's too sure why they do this. Could it be for moisture? Could it be for protein in the blood? But this is so extraordinary. I feel so privileged to get close to this behaviour. This is a behaviour that Darwin didn't know about. It's only been recently discovered. And look at that.
Blood feeding seems gory and parasitical, but the boobies are rarely harmed. To survive, Dracula needs his coffin, and the ultimate vampire needs pools of still water. Mosquito larvae. These aren't bloodsuckers yet. They filter particles of whatever is floating in the water with bristly moustaches. They can swivel their heads around 180 degrees. These comma-shaped pupae are the pre-vampire stage. From them, blood-sucking adults will emerge. Destroying these nurseries is a public health priority. For mosquitoes, this is a perfect breeding ground. It's a tyre dump near Baltimore, Maryland. There are 4 billion dump tyres in the United States, every one of them a potential vampire's launching pad. And these are the larvae of an especially vicious mosquito, the tiger, which came to the US from Japan, a stowaway in a consignment of tyres. The tiger larvae can thrive in any man-made object with a little water in it, even something as small as a bottle cap. And the adults that emerge can carry any or all of many deadly diseases. The Asian tiger is one of the few vampires that doesn't shun the daylight. They even bite in bright sunshine. In a disease-carrying mosquito, the viruses, bacteria or protozoa multiply in its body and then migrate into its salivary glands, ready to be injected into a larger animal. The fight against the tiger mosquito is mainly a fight against dengue fever and encephalitis. And the best way to fight is to get rid of standing water or make it uninhabitable. This isn't last respects, it's chemicals that kill larvae. In some places there's just too much standing water to cope with, and the larvae have to be killed by spraying. In Florida, with its dampness and subtropical warmth, about $60 million a year is spent on keeping the little vampires down. As it happens, Florida's prolific mosquitoes rarely carry terrible diseases, but without mosquito control, the place would be hell to live in. There's one part of the state that's never been sprayed. This is the most terrifying thing I've ever done. We're right in the middle of the Everglades. Look at these mosquitoes. These are salt marsh mosquitoes. I've been walking along here breathing. They're following the plume of carbon dioxide. And look at that. They're all feeding on my arm. There's probably 500 bites a minute on any exposed skin. I'm not doing this for fun. I'm with a mosquito scientist. He's told me to cover my face in DEET. If I don't do that, even when you breathe, they'll go up your nose. So, Alan, how long have you been studying them for?
It's about 25 years now, Nigel, and it doesn't get a whole lot better than this, does it?
This is absolutely terrible. And what species are these?
This is the salt marsh mosquito called Aedes taeniorhynchus. And it's probably the most common salt marsh mosquito in the world.
Look at them on my... this is the most horrible thing I've ever done. I cannot believe... I mean, the noise of them, the whole place is just like whining with their wings.
You realize that, you know, this is a landing rate of probably between 500 and 1,000 a minute.
And you wanted me here to attract them in because you study them. Do you want to use the...
Sure, let me collect some of those off.
Please.
This is a power aspirator that has a very gentle vacuum. And one of the reasons we use this mosquito is it has never experienced very much pesticides on it. So we use this as a susceptible strain of the salt marsh mosquito.
This is unbearable, isn't it?
This is, and imagine what the Spanish explorers had to go through. That this is why they slept offshore, and why they also, when they came onshore, buried themselves in the sand to avoid this mosquito.
Okay, you should have got 20,000, I should think.
We have very close to 20,000 now. That may be enough.
Yeah, that's how many you need for a sample.
That's about all we need.
I mean, this is actually unbearable. In all my travels, I've never known anything like this. This is incredible.
It doesn't get a whole lot worse than this. This particular mosquito has exsanguinated cattle before.
What does exsanguinated mean?
It means that they'll take all the blood out of them. The animal will actually go into shock and die from being fed on by tens of thousands or millions of these mosquitoes. It's been estimated that from a single square foot of salt marsh, that there are over 10,000 mosquito eggs of this species. So you can imagine...
A single square foot?
Single square foot is 10,000 eggs.
I'd say, look at this reaction I'm having. Look, this is... This is unbelievable. I mean, I'm coming up in bumps. You don't come up in bumps
I don't,
at all.
but then I'm accustomed to being bitten by this mosquito, where fortunately you're not at the moment.
Yeah.
It's not one of those things that you like to develop an immunity to, but you will eventually.
Do you mind if we go?
I don't think so. I think now's out.
You've got enough. Do you mind if I run?
Why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. The vampire rises. An aquatic larva is transformed into a flying machine. No fictitious vampire ever did anything as bizarre as this. The mosquito must work quickly. Inside the long proboscis there are serrated tools for cutting through flesh, a tube to inject saliva, and one to suck up the blood. And as the little vampire fills up, it ejects the watery part of the blood to make room for more corpuscles. It must get away before the body reacts to the saliva left behind. But diseases can be carried in the saliva too. In the new body, these diseases can multiply and rampage. The most famous of these is malaria, which kills 1 million people every year. But mosquitoes might be giving vampires a bad name. There's one bloodsucker that can save lives or at least body parts. A boy's finger is nearly cut off. It's sewn back on, but the blood inside is congested and circulation is very sluggish. Amazingly, a leech can help to repair it. A medicinal leech has 3 sharp-toothed jaws to cut through skin. Then it injects saliva containing the chemical hirudin, which stops the blood from clotting. Gradually, the congested blood will be sucked into the leech. For the boy, it's like having an extra little heart on his fingertip, pulling while his own heart pushes. And when the leech is full and falls off, the blood will keep flowing until the tissues are repaired. The medicinal leech is just one of 600 species. To find one of the oddest and most specialized of them all, I've come to the Cameroon in Central Africa. I've one chance to find the bloodsucker I'm looking for.
The leech I want to see is unique. It's the only leech in the world that's really fussy about what blood it feeds on. It will only feed on the blood of hippopotamuses, and this is the only wild hippo in the world that you can get close enough to inspect for leeches. They live around the tail and around the armpits. There, the hippopotamus leech. It's brown, so it's camouflaged against the hippo's hide.
Its mating habits are really bizarre.
They actually only reproduce inside the hippo's rectum.
They're strong enough to push inside.
They can really get out of a tight spot. If I clench my fist as tight as I can, look, there it comes, straight through the fingers.
My prize leech came from a tame hippo that was orphaned as a baby and was raised by people. That's why I could get so close. Most other leeches are much less choosy about the blood that they'll drink. They'll even drink mine.
In Southeast Asia and here in Eastern Australia, there are some amazing bloodsuckers. They only emerge when it's damp and they can survive for a year without a feed. To find them, you just need to walk through the rainforest and they'll soon come after you.
Leeches are worms. Earthworms are their nearest relatives, which goes to show that just about anything can turn into a vampire. They have suckers at both ends, the back end is an anchor, and the front is the business end. And of course, when the time finally comes, it's that end that does the blood sucking.
To be a willing host, all I need to do is sit and wait.
Having suckers at both ends means that the leech doesn't have to wriggle the way its relatives do. It moves towards its prey in a relatively distinguished stride.
They're on their way. Land leeches have rows of light and dark receptors along their body. As it's this close, can probably perceive me as a moving shape, but this will really excite it. They've got chemical receptors on their heads and they can detect the carbon dioxide from the breath of their prey. Look at that, he's really getting excited. This is slightly repulsive, but I'm intrigued at what it would feel like to have my blood sucked by land leeches. I really have a sneaking admiration for these little things. They've got delicate fluid-filled bodies, but they've actually tracked me down in this forest. They could feed on small wallabies or birds. They're brilliant. Oh, they're moving up to my ankles now. They're brilliantly adapted for life in the forest.
They're searching for blood close to the surface so they can bite precisely.
They've got semicircular jaws armed with teeth. They're starting to saw into my flesh. I don't know whether it's just my imagination, but I can almost feel the blood flowing from my veins into the leeches. Oh, that did hurt a bit there. I could feel one of their jaws working. Land leeches can suck up 10 times their weight in blood. They'll feast until they're gorged with blood. That can take 30 to 40 minutes.
They get rid of excess water so they can pack in more red blood cells.
These are fascinating creatures. Been feeding now for about 20 minutes. This is weird. These leeches started out as long, stringy things, and now they're great big fat balloons, and they feasted on blood, and it's my blood. They've got their teeth embedded at one end and a strong sucker at the other. Whatever you do, once they're attached, you can't dislodge them. They did eventually stop feeding, but it took an hour and a half, not 40 minutes. These things are brilliant vampires.
But they are vampires, bloodsuckers, the very stuff of human nightmares, stealing the very fluid that makes the difference between life and death.
My hunt for animal bloodsuckers is over. I've seen and fed quite a few of them. But what about human vampires? Surely they can't exist.
Now you can get the program you just saw on home